Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started just so we can use your time wisely. We are recording this tonight so that we can put it on the website for any of our users that weren't able to make it. We are excited to share with you all of our updates to our Life in the United States Family Finance Spending Plan simulation that we've had around for a long time. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Robin Palmer. I've been working with Take Charge Today since 2015, and then we have Lisa and Tiffany who have been around a lot longer than I have. We're glad to be here tonight to answer questions and to share this with you. Just as an update for some of you who follow us, we have 3 new people who have joined our training team. So if you are coming to more of our webinars or see us at conferences, you might see Lynette, Andrea, or Traquel with us. We're hoping to get them trained so they can be out and about the way we are and sharing our wonderful resources with each of you. Before we jump in, we want you to know for the spring, we have a couple of more webinars that have been scheduled. We work with Intuit Education in some of our simulations that we have included in our materials. So we're doing a webinar with them on taxes at the end of February, just to help you get prepared for teaching that with your students. I know when I was in the classroom, February was the time of year that I did taxes with my students. So we're hoping to share with you some of their new resources. And then in March, we're going to do a webinar on using children's books to teach personal finance. We've spent some time last year adding new books to our list and creating activities that go along with those. We thought this would be a great webinar to get you excited for April National Financial Literacy Month and give you some ideas of activities that you could do with your students during the month of April, either just in your school or working with a service learning project where you might share some financial tips with students at other schools, even in the elementary level. If you have any other suggestions for workshop topics or needing support with any of our lessons, feel free to put those in the chat tonight or to email them to our Take Charge Today email address, and we will be happy to connect with you and see what we can do to create some more workshops that will help you be more confident in teaching things in the classroom. All right, we're going to jump into Life in the United States. So first thing you should notice, if you've used this before, is we have a brand new look. We have been working on this project pretty hard for about 6 months to get this ready to share with you. And so we're glad to be kicking it off and hope that you will have the opportunity to use this simulation this semester with your students. I wanted to start with just giving you a refresher for those of you that maybe hadn't used this for a while because things hadn't been updated, or those that are new to this simulation that we use. I just wanted to give a little refresher on what's included so that you will understand what's involved. So as we look at the different pieces tonight, it'll all make sense in your head. So if you use the Complete Life in the United States set, and that's our set of families that we have created, or households, we now have 27 individuals in 19 households. We've really tried to update them according to changes in our demographics in the United States, and we'll take a look at that in a little bit. Within the simulation, the participants, so your students, are going to develop a spending plan for an individual or a household, which is based on career and income information. So the careers are representative of major careers that are in the United States, and the income information is average income for those professions throughout the United States. So real world data that is out there that will help the students as they make these decisions. The students will create a final spending plan for their participants that will allow them to meet their personal and financial goals. So each family or individual scenario tells the students about the family and what's important to them, things that they're currently spending money on, or things that they want to be able to save for in the future. So the goal is that the students will create this final spending plan that reflects those things that are important to the household they were assigned to. The simulation also includes some of those gotcha moments that we know happen in real life. So the students have the opportunity to get some debt through credit card, and also to have something happen that may be positive or negative that they will then react to and make adjustments in their spending plan for. We want them to really understand that although we have a plan for life, we know that life sometimes takes us by surprise. So the students will have that experience. And then throughout the simulation, they will have the opportunity to share some thoughts, reflect on things that they have learned. And at the end of the simulation, we've created a new assessment option that we'll talk about in a little bit. So if you want them to do a capstone project kind of at the end of the simulation, we have some choices for you with regards to that. Just to give you the background, our research was done using these professional and government sites. So we use information from the Census Bureau to tell us about the people that are currently in the United States, age levels, education levels, income levels, types of jobs that they have, where they live, family sizes, things like that. We use the Bureau of Labor Statistics to identify those occupations and income levels for us. We use the U.S. Department of Agriculture that gave us information about food choices and health things that are part of families' decisions. We used, you can see other websites on there that we use to find our data for the housing that the students are choosing from, the cars that the students are choosing from, and other data that they will see as part of what used to be called our general notebook. Our goals in revamping our life in the United States and updating it were to create the scenarios that really are reflective of typical US families now. The previous simulation was from several years ago. And so, you know, probably just from looking around your neighborhood that things have changed. People have changed, families have changed. We want to make sure that we capture that new information. We also knew that we needed to update our typical household expenses. Things are a lot more expensive now than they were 10 years ago. So we wanted to make sure that the students had the opportunity to look at food costs, internet costs, housing costs that we know have changed in the last 10 years. And we also know that that consumers have a lot of different options now. So you can see one of the pictures there is a picture of a rideshare app. We didn't have things like that in our old simulation, but those are a lot of the choices that consumers have now that have been updated. So you'll see some changes there that you might recognize. And then we really wanted to create a digital product. I was one of those teachers that had my 18 notebooks and they stored them in a closet. And when I needed them, I pulled them out so I could do the simulation. And we know that a lot of students now have their own laptops or school-based laptops they're using, and that it would be easier on the teacher, less paper, less preparation time, if you had a digital product that you could choose to use. The students are now just going to have 3 different documents that they use. They have a general information notebook. So this used to be the notebook with the choices for the housing and the transportation and the food and clothing options in there. So this is in a Google slide, but we made it look like a notebook so that it could create that link to your brain of what's going to be included in there. For the household profiles, we now have them also in a Google slide document, but you can see that it's formatted to look like an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And then we have linked the different documents and decisions and choices that the students will be making and recording answers for on that cover page in the table of contents. And then the third thing they're going to use are the spending plan. Is the spending plan that relates to the family that they are going to be creating the numbers for. So those are the only 3 documents that the students are going to be using. For the teachers, we've given you pretty much everything you had before, just it's been updated. So you'll have the typical lesson plan that you see in our materials. It gives you the overview of the simulation, some different facilitation options that you could use based on how many students you have, what your class makeup is. We give you the talking points like we do normally for our PowerPoint presentations. We've given you neighborhood reflection questions that some are repeated ones based on what the students can choose from, but additional ones that you can use if you really want to have a robust discussion in your class about what's happening in your neighborhood. We've given you a choice board. So in the past, we had a reflection essay that the students could do. So we've given some different choices to match different learning styles of students now with a rubric that goes along with that. And then we've given you an overview of all the households so that you have all those together in one place. We are giving you what we are calling the roadmap presentation. So that's going to be your instructional PowerPoint as you walk your students through each of the steps in the simulation itself. We have given you answer keys for all of the households, and we will take a look at those so that you have an idea of what's in there. And then we've updated the credit card statements and the chance cards to reflect current prices, current interest levels on credit cards, and things like that. So 3 different items for the students that they will be using, and then you'll have these 5 main things that you will be using as the instructor facilitating this in their classroom. I'm going to pause right there and see if anybody has any questions to begin with before we jump into what the documents actually look like. So feel free to unmute or type in the chat if you have any questions that are in your head right now. So Lori, we will talk about that and we'll take a look at the lesson plan, but typically I think our instructions say to plan on at least 3 class periods because it's pretty involved. We want the students to be making really good thought out decisions for the families. And sometimes they have to look at the details. So they're not going to be able to rush through it. They are going to want to take time to do that. When I did it with my classes, we actually allocated a whole week for it because we had to get started and choose the families, and then we did some wrap up things at the end. So at least 3 days is my recommendation. Other people can add in their own ideas as well when we get to the end, and I have you share some ideas. Whitney, the paper versions are no longer on the website. We feel like it's really important for the students to have access to updated costs, and we know that all those costs were really outdated. We are throwing this out to you guys right now as a way for us to test the product and make sure that we're giving you what you want. So I know we already had an email from a teacher today that said, hey, can you make this so that I can print out the housing and the transportation choices on pages like that for the students? So we are happy to take your input tonight as we look at what we've prepared for you, and you can share with us what will work better for your classroom, because we really want to be able to roll out a final version for the fall. But if you use it in the spring, we definitely want your impact from that.
Okay, can I ask a follow-up question to that? This is Whitney, sorry.
Sure.
So I was referring to like the packets that they used to put all of the answers on. So it didn't have any of the actual like pricing information, like the answer packet. Could we still allow them to use that with the online resources? It would be the same?
So yes, the spreadsheet is what they will write on. The online resource, so the student household profile document that we'll take a look at, that has places where the students would record their answers, but it would be easy for you to print that. You could just download it as a PDF and give it to them as worksheets that way, or you can have them do that online. So
Thank you.
hang on to that thought, and after we take a look at what we have for you, then you can ask some more questions. Malatis, is that your name? That is beautiful.
It's actually Milady.
Milady, oh my goodness, that's even better. I would say that possibly this could be something good. You would definitely want to look through the simulation materials, but if you wanted, like for a family activity, for an open house or something like that, you definitely could use the spending materials, so the transportation, housing, food, all of those choices they need to make, and give the family a blank spreadsheet, and they could try and create one together based on those choices that they have. So that could be a good option for a STEM night or a STEAM night if you're having families around to be able to do things like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Lisa went ahead and put our email address in the chat for you in case you want to keep asking some questions, but go ahead and throw them in the chat, or you can email us directly if you need to. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump in and take a look at some of these documents, actually all of these documents, so that you can see where they are and what they include. They are already uploaded into our website. And so if you have an account, you could log in right now if you want to and take a look as I go through these. I'm going to try and do this strategically. So we're going to look at the 3 student documents first and what's in those. And then we're going to look at the teacher documents. If you don't have an account with us yet, we're going to ask you not to do that right now, but just kind of pay attention to the presentation. We will hang around after we're done to help you with that if needed, or you can just take a picture of our website and do it tomorrow or do it when we're done, and then just let us know if you have any problems. So when you get to the Life In section of our website, you will see down at the bottom, we have several documents that are part of the lesson materials. The student documents that we are going to look at first are the Life in the United States General Information Presentation, the household profiles, decisions, and student reflections, and then the spending plan. So those are the 3 things. The names are a little bit different, but we are hoping to share those with you tonight so that you can kind of get familiar with them. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second just so I can get to the first document that I want to share with you. All righty. So this is what used to be the general information notebook, which is now in a Google Slides. But like I said, we set it up to look like a notebook so it would help you connect to what you were doing. You notice that it has tabs on the sides. So this will allow the students to just jump to different areas quickly and not having to go slide by slide through each of the slides that you would do in a normal presentation. We begin with the overview. So you can read that together as a class or let the students read that. You will notice that we have bold in here. We want the students to come out with a 0 balance for their spreadsheet when they're done. I was one of those teachers that always told my students, you need to give every dollar a job. So if you can encourage them to have a 0 balance, that will make sure that they're trying to use all of their money really well, even if that extra money just goes into savings and investing or helps pay off some of their debt. And then on the right-hand side of this page, you will see we have explanations of each of those tabs. So it gives the students an overview of what is going to be included in each of those. We give you a snapshot of the households with, you can see down in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got their level of education indicated by color. And this will help you as well as you're choosing which students you want to use which profiles, because some of them are a little more challenging than others. We talk about a SMART goal. Hopefully that's one of the topics that you teach in your class, but it may have been a long time. So the students can actually read about a SMART goal. We have that example on the left-hand side for them. And then we have the questions that they're going to answer, not here on this slide, but in their general or in their household profile document that we will look at next. Down at the bottom, you see we have this do it now sticky note. So as the students are going through things, when they see that sticky note, that means they're going to jump someplace else and go make some decisions. And again, then we just have instructions about a spending plan. We have updated the spending plan percentage guidelines based on current numbers and the current costs that financial experts are saying people spend in each of these categories. We've got typical paycheck things. So this should look very familiar for what we used before, except now we've updated and added a payroll card because we know that lots of people are getting paid that way. We've got the housing information. So helping them think about the advantages to renting versus buying and vice versa. Insurance that they need to think about. We tried to highlight for you, like in this yellow up in the top, that if the students are choosing a rental option, they really need to pay attention to if their power, water, and garbage is included in that rental cost, or if those are additional things that they are going to have to pay for. So try to put all the information up front, and then we have the options that were on those worksheets that you would just print out and put in the binders for the students. Same thing about transportation. We talk about new versus pre-owned vehicles. What types of insurance is important for them to have. The options that they could choose to purchase. And then we had our mass transportation options on before. We had a bus, but now we've added on rideshare. We've added on metro. We've added on some electric scooters and bikes. So other transportation options that households would have right now. Typical insurance information. The costs of food, and make sure that you're paying attention to this page and that your students are as well. On the left-hand side, we do have somebody in the simulation who's 18, but living independently. So if someone in your household is living independently, you're going to use the food costs on the left. If you have an 18-year-old who's living at home with mom and dad, they're going to be a dependent. They're going to use pricing that is on the right-hand side. Then we've got our costs of raising the children. For single parent and two parent households. And then we do the break that the government recommended based on their income level. So making less than a certain amount, more than a certain amount. We know that fits into our household budgets, and we want to make sure that the students are understanding that. And then we've got our average expenditures for those fun extra things that if you have extra money to spend, you can do that. And some things that students may forget that we have to buy, like shampoo and Windex and dish soap and things like that. So some of these options, we know in the profiles, they won't be able to afford them. But for other ones, they have the choice of being able to add this onto their spending plans. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute again on this, or you have any questions about this notebook that the students would be using?
I have a question. I have not done this simulation, so I'm very excited to do this with my students. But do you suggest that we go through each of the tabs in that particular order, or is there a certain way that you suggest that we do this with the students? I mean, obviously, I know you've got to pick the households, but are there certain things we should do before others, or just kind of go down through those tabs?
We do have a recommendation. So there's a PowerPoint presentation that we call the roadmap, which is how you can move the class through making the same decisions at the same time. So we will get there. And then we know the students are going to come back and look at this. They might have to, like when they get to food, they might be saying, oh my gosh, food is so much more expensive than we thought it was. We need to go back and choose a different place to live because we can't afford that.
Okay,
so
thank
the
you.
students will have access to everything and can just make those decisions as they move forward. Okay, any other questions on that? Okay.
Robin, there's a question. Is this a 9 through 12 grade resource or 10 through 12?
I think ninth graders could do it. I think even some eighth graders could. You might have to hold their hand a little bit more as you're walking through and helping them make those decisions. But it's pretty self-explanatory to say, we need a place to live. We need a way to get around. We need food, clothes, things like that. So I think ninth graders, clear through 12th graders would be able to do it well. Lisa, can you see the profile document now, or are we still on the PowerPoint?
We are looking at your screen and it's showing the side view on the left of the notebook,
Okay.
and we're seeing the notebook.
Thanks, that's not where we want to be.
Okay.
Some of these documents are downloaded, and so when I switch screens, it doesn't carry over, and some are not. Okay, so this is the second document the students will be using. This is what we call our household profile, and it also has a place where they're going to write their SMART goals, and they're going to answer reflection questions for you. So the name of the family is up at the top. And again, use the instructor. You'll have to decide which profile you want which students to use. We give you kind of an overview again for the students in case they get here and they're saying, what are we doing? And in blue, you see we have again put the goal that we want them to come up with a balanced spending plan with a zero balance. That's important. And we give them the documents that they're going to be using so that if they forget, if you put them in their Google Drive and they forget, they can come back and see what they are. And then here we've given you the information about each of the family profiles. So for James and Mary Bancroft, we've got their race, their gender, their age, their marital status, if they have children or not. This is typical for what you saw before, what their occupations are, what their education level is, and where they live. And then here is their specific background information that tells you a little bit about the family, how they met, what they're doing, what's important to them. Anything that is in red font is money that they are currently spending. So that is really important for the students to pay attention to those notes, because some of those costs need to be included in the spreadsheet. There won't be a choice. They need to be able to include that. And then down at the bottom, you see we've got their occupation, who their employer is, and any employer provided benefits, and how much is being spent on those. So important for the students to read this carefully and to pay attention to those numbers that are in red. Then we give you their paycheck and the paycheck stub. That information is going to transfer over to their spending plan. We need to know what their income was, what their tax deductions were, and how much their paycheck actually was, so they can fill that in the income section. If there are two people in the household, you're going to have both of their paycheck informations within this one document. Then this is where the students are going to write their SMART goal. So we saw it in the notebook. We were talking about what's included in a SMART goal, told them the questions they were going to answer. So when they see that yellow sticky note that says do it now, this is where they're going to come to record their information. Then we're going to give them, again, just some information about a spending plan. We want to make sure they're not confused. That same pie chart that you saw before is transferred onto here. And then there will be a link to a spending plan on this document as well. And then we've given them some specific questions that we thought were important for them to answer during your personal reflection time or the neighborhood reflection time. So you'll see the first one says, after you look at the family's profile and their paychecks and savings, we want you to tell us about the family. What do you think about them? What details did you read in their profile that maybe worry you or encourage you as you're thinking about making the spending plan for them? And then after they select their housing, we're asking them to say, how does that fit with the family's needs or their wants or their goals or their values? Did they pick a house because they have active children and they want to have a backyard? Did they pick an apartment because they're just a single person and they don't need a lot of things? So there's several questions that will be listed here that you can send the students to work on after they have finished making decisions in each of those areas. So this is kind of the typical information about the families that you used to be able to share with students. Any questions about that? Okay. So I'm going to jump to the spreadsheet now so that you can see that. Even though our previous simulation was kind of on paper and we had the students doing their spending plan on paper, I was one of those teachers that made a spreadsheet for my students because I liked them to have their Excel skills and to be able to use their skills in learning more about the spreadsheets and how to be able to use them successfully with their jobs, with other classes and things like that. I don't know why I've got collaboration options up there, but we'll change that. So in the spending plan, all of the students will start with the same spending plan. So they're going to have their own copy. They're going to put their household or individual's name up here in the top so that you know which family they're working on. And then we suggest that you have them put the month of April or May, whenever you're going to have them do this activity in there, just so they have that month in their mind. They're going to fill in their income information, wages from their paycheck, and just fill those in. If they have a savings goal already and their profile shows that they are saving money, then the students can go ahead and save or go ahead and enter that information that's in there. And then you'll see we've got these typical categories: the housing, the transportation, their insurance, their food, all of those are in there. We have entered formulas. So if you're not familiar with a formula, over here in column D, where we've got this hashtag division O, because there's a formula in there. And often students will say, well, what does that mean? Those of you that use spreadsheets, you know that as you start filling in numbers, things will populate within the spreadsheet. So try not to let the students play around with those formulas, because that formula is going to tell them what percent of their income are they putting towards their housing, putting towards their transportation and their food. So they can compare it to that pie chart and the percentages which the experts say they should be using. So those are those three, and then all of the numbers will fill in. It'll populate by itself. And our goal again is that they get a 0 in the very bottom row where they're going to have a net loss or gain. We want that to be 0. So most of the time, 99% of the time, the students are going to have to go back and make changes. Any questions about the spreadsheet?
The spreadsheet will work with Google Sheets, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
If you download the spreadsheet from our website, it's the Microsoft Excel, but it's also got a version in Google. So that would be either or.
Trying to make it easy for you and accessible to your classroom, whatever it is that you're using.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we're going to take a look now at the roadmap. So kind of the instructional PowerPoint that you will use as you go through the simulation with your students. It is a little less detailed than what our previous one was, because we tried to simplify a few things and make things less redundant and tedious. So to make it a little more user-friendly for the students so that they would really enjoy going through all of this. So we've given you objectives. So this is you, the teacher, up telling them your objectives are to create a spending plan for a household and to incorporate the decisions that they have that are important for them, and to be able to look at income and human capital. So am I making more money because I went to school, I got training, did things like that? And then to be able to think about our 4 course principles that we have in our lessons through our Take Charge Today materials. So this is just for you, right? So you're going to give them the overview of what's included. A lot of it I've shared with you already tonight. We want them to remember that they're better off in a community than by themselves. And as they work on these decisions for the families, they need to think about the values, the needs, the wants, and the goals of the family. And so here you would pause and say, okay, first thing we're going to do is have you read through your household profile and answer that question about who's in there, right? So have them read and think about who are these people, what's going on in their lives, where are they working, what are the things that are important to them. The lesson plan will ask you at that point to pause, and you can have the students make a poster of their families to be able to share, or they're going to get together in small groups and just share about their household so that you start getting this understanding of who's in our household. If I get a family that is fairly wealthy, I might think, oh, everybody's wealthy, but we have some really poor families that are struggling as part of the simulation. So having that discussion time with your class will be really valuable in helping students understand that everybody's a little bit different and every neighborhood is going to be a little bit different. We want them to think about these goals that we're asking them to do. So then we can say, you understand their household, you understand your neighborhood. Now let's get started and what is it that we're going to do? So first step is to look at the financial decisions from their profile to make sure those are in their heads and they're thinking about them. They're going to write a SMART goal based on what was important to the family. So if the family was really pro-education and they wanted to save money for their children for college, then that might be a good SMART goal that your students would write. If somebody wanted to travel more, then they might write a SMART goal around that. So there are not a lot of one right answers in the simulation because the families are different. Your students are going to be a little bit different, but they should be able to identify what's important to their profile family and be able to share things from that as they are making these decisions for them. So they'll write a SMART goal. And then we've given you the little hint there that says, okay, now figure out how much money is going to go from that SMART goal into their spending plan and go to your spreadsheet and fill that in there. Then we're going to jump to the paycheck. They're going to add that information. We give them the step-by-step instructions, just like you would in the classroom as you're sharing with them, having them enter the numbers, having them go back and look at the profile and do the numbers match what the image was on there. Making sure if they have 2 people like James and Mary Bancroft that I showed you, that they're adding those numbers together so that we have a household income and not just one person. And then we just start working on each of those. So Maria, this kind of gives you a guide of what we would do next. So we're going to enter the information. We're going to talk about saving. Then we're going to look at housing decisions and what choices they can make for that. We give them the reminder of 33%. So they can do the math to say how much is 33% of our income, give us a guideline on how much money we should spend when we're looking for a house to buy or a place to rent. And then we go through the transportation. Same thing, give them some questions to think about. Give them the guideline. And then same thing with food. Give them some questions, give them the guideline. They're going to do that. And then we have inserted in the presentation some kind of hard stops for this neighborhood reflection time again. So the students would go back to their household profile document and complete the reflection questions that had to do with the different categories they just made decisions for. And then you can have a discussion with your class again. So let's talk about this. Who chose to live in a house that they're purchasing, who chose to live in a house that they're renting, who chose to maybe use alternative transportation because your profile said that you lived close to where you work. So we have a good time to talk and just share that information as a class. So the students, again, have that bigger picture of the community. And then we just continue on in the presentation. So I'm not going to go through the rest of this because you guys will be able to do that, but we've got the insurance and those other costs that are in there. And along the way, it's just a place for you to guide the students through the decisions and then to be able to stop and have those discussions when you want to. Any questions about that? Okay, hopefully you like our new look. We thought we picked something that was really fun to be able to use. All right, let's take a look at the lesson plan. So for Maria and any of the rest of you who might be new to our lessons, our lesson plans are very comprehensive, and we do that on purpose because we want teachers who are new to teaching personal finance to feel really comfortable as they prepare and are ready to share this information with their students. So all of our lesson plans have the standards at the top, the materials that you will need that are included in the lesson, things you might have to get separately. So we put like the poster paper and markers if when you do that initial neighborhood reflection, you want the kids to make a poster. So just a reminder to have that in your head. We've given you links to our external resources like we normally do. Given you again the overview to the simulation itself, what's included. For those of you that are new to our lesson plans, pay attention to this column, the grade column on the right-hand side. That gives you some little tips and tricks that we feel like are important for you to recognize. So we've got all of that. We've got our typical step-by-step through the roadmap PowerPoint. So if you're not sure what to say on each of those slides, then we give you the talking points that go through all of that. I'm going to skip through all of those. We've given you information about how to prepare the materials. So what you need to share with the students to put in your classroom learning system, however you're doing that, things that you would need to print, and then different tips for putting all that together. So we had in that roadmap some reflection questions for the students to do, but we've given you a lot more questions in here. So if you want the students to answer those, but then you want to include different questions as part of the classroom reflection that you would do, we've given you a lot of different questions that you'll see in here that you can answer or ask the students to answer is what we want to do. We've added in a choice board for the final assessment. If you want them to do a final reflection on the whole simulation and what they did. In the past, we just had a reflection essay. So we've kept that in there because we know some students really love to write. But we've also tried to update it with creating an infographic for our artistic students, recording a podcast for our audio students that like that, making a storyboard or a comic strip for your students that like to combine some of their artistry with their words, writing a skit or a role play, or even developing a presentation. So if you're done with the simulation and you want to see what they were really able to remember and understand, then we've given you this option that you can share with them, as well as the rubric that talks about the content and is it including what you asked them to, their own creativity, their communication skills, and how the finished product looked. So really fun. I love giving my students choices, especially if I know that the artistic kids are going to love being able to draw, and other kids that love to do video would be able to make choices like that. So I hope that that is a good update that we've included for you to use. At the very end of the lesson plan, you will see this summary of all of the household profile descriptions. So as you are making decisions about which students are going to get which profiles, this is what I would recommend you start with, because you'll be able to see the household, the person or the couple, what their level of education is, what their marital status is. We know that usually two adults living together are going to make more money, so their income's going to be higher. That's probably going to be a little bit easier for the students. What I really am proud of us adding is on the very right-hand side, we have added a profile difficulty level for you to use. So the rookie ones with 1 star, those are going to be the easier households to develop a spending plan for. The choices are not going to be as difficult. And so if you have a student that maybe struggles or is younger, I would assign them one of those. If you have some really smart kids that think they know it all, give them a profile level of 3, because they're going to have to make some difficult choices for that. So that document is all there for you, and you could just print it out and assign those to the students that way. We have included down at the bottom, just in case inquiring minds want to know and you're up at night wondering, we've given you the information that we use that we got from the census and other of the professional documents that show the data from the Census Bureau and other things. Just in case somebody says, is this fictitious or real? You can show that to them. Okay, any questions about the lesson plan? Thanks, Lisa, for pointing that out. Yeah, the lesson plan really is for you. The profiles are for you, just so you can make good decisions yourself as you go through there. Okay, I want to show you the answer keys just so that you can see how you can use those when you're kind of checking the students' work. So the students are all using the same spreadsheet, same basic one with the formulas in there. What we did for you in the answer key is we created a spreadsheet with data in there. It does not have a right answer, because remember, they can make different decisions for their families about how much they're saving or investing or where they're living or things like that. But what we did is took the information from their paychecks and then information from their profiles and put them into the spreadsheet. So if a student's having problems, they're like, I just can't pay for anything, you could go back and say, all right, let's check your net income number and see if it matches mine. Because maybe for this family, this is 2 people that were together, we should have added together their income. Maybe the student forgot to do that. So this is gives you a place to double check. And then if you look and see anything in red, that information was from the profile, and that's information that the students should have transferred into their spreadsheet. So those are the things that have to be in there. And that's just another good way for you to check what is happening with them. So I just always kept these on my own laptop. We have put some tips in there, like we have Ava Cantor, who's really poor, and her profile said that she lives in a shelter right now. She lives in a homeless shelter. So she's not going to have any housing costs that she needs to include in the profile or include in the spreadsheet. And she's also getting SNAP or food stamp benefits. So the kids are going to have to do kind of some subtraction. They'll choose the food, subtract what she's getting from her SNAP benefits, and be able to see how much food she'd have to pay for out of her own pocket. So this is for you, giving you tips that hopefully will help you along the way. Any questions about that? Okay, so the only other documents that I did not share with you are the credit card statements. They pretty much stayed the same as what they were before. So you're going to print out credit card statements. I always just held them upside down, let my students choose them at random. That was their credit card statement. Some of them, they don't owe anything. Sometimes they owe a lot. It gives them what their minimum monthly payment is, so that number has to go on their spending plan if they do that. And then we have those chance cards, the ones that say you fell down and you broke your leg and you had to go to the emergency room and it cost you X number of dollars, and now they have to account for that in their spending plan somewhere. Or they got a $50 bonus at work, and so now that can be income that gets added into their income for that particular note or that particular month. Okay, I'm going to get back to our presentation so we can share a few more things with you before we let you go for the evening. For those of you that have used our simulation in the past, the paper version, do you have any tips for success that you would like to share with the other teachers who are here with us tonight? Feel free to just unmute if you want to.
So I will say, this is Amy. So it's been years since I have actually used the Life In, just because of the constant updating that occurred and whatnot, putting the binders together. So I am very excited about this digital version. When I did use it in the past, I would use it as my kind of like final assessment for the semester, because it was just a culmination of everything that we discussed in the class. And it was a good way for them to have to actually remember and then regurgitate and reuse the information in this simulation. So I am noticing that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's not a set of directions for the students to go self-paced. It's more of a teacher-led walkthrough, and then they have time to work on it and then move on to the next step, correct?
It's up to you, Amy. If you really wanted to turn it over to them, you could give them those 3 documents. So their general information notebook and their household profile and a spending plan, and say go. Because we've given enough directions within there that reminds them, this is why you make this decision, or this is what you need to consider when you're making that decision. So you definitely could turn it over to them if you wanted to use it for a final assessment.
Excellent. And I would say a tip for success would just simply obviously you guys have done a great job knowing that everything is color coordinated now. So it is highlighted. So just constantly reminding the students to just look at those highlighted spots, because that's the information, one, that's pertinent to go into their spending plan. And 2, those are usually the to-do things as well. But you guys have the sticky notes on there. So that works great as well.
Thank you. Anybody else that'd like to share anything?
I would.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah. I just used this in December with my personal finance class. It's a semester long. And I really like the paper. I put the married couples together and they had to work together, which was really good for some of them. I have some who are never going to have kids till they're like 28 now. But the paper helped them because they had to become organized and look through, I got to go back to the housing, because when they didn't hit 0, they had to go back and relook at things. And I thought that was really good because nothing's like right at the tip of their fingers in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that, like, we got to be organized so we can get this done. And I was probably slow. It took us 8 days, and then I gave them 2 days to write the reflection to do this project. For those of you who haven't done it, my suggestion is that you start the walkthrough with the PowerPoint with them. Like, okay, you all have your identities, 5 minutes to read that. And you start with that. And I helped them get through their first choice. And then I let them go. And then I was like, okay, you guys work on this, ask me questions. And I just kept walking the room. And so and then if we get to a part, I would be like, hey class, here's what we're going to do. So that's my suggestion. That's how, let's put that, that's how I ran it. So
That's good. Yep. We always want you to take our materials and do what works in your classes. Anybody else? Okay, we are taking note of all of your ideas, and Lisa and Tiffany and I will get back together and we'll kind of revisit and see if we can make some things that maybe are more paper version worthy of what you're doing. So thank you for sharing those with us tonight. My tips for success, just from my experience of using this with my classroom, were definitely you have to plan ahead. So it's not something you can necessarily throw together the night before. You need to have a plan because it's going to take a while. The difficulty level designation would have definitely helped me the first time that I used it with my students because I had no idea. I just printed out the binders and I let them choose at random. And some of the kids that should have gotten something easier got some of the hardest ones and they really struggled. So from the teacher perspective, that would have helped me plan better for which students I wanted to assign, or if I do just want to do it randomly. The neighborhood reflection time in my classes, I felt was really key for helping the students understand successes and challenges of other households. My own children grew up, like we're a middle income family, but they were very spoiled. I used to tell them that some of my students lived in a house that was the size of our family room, and they had 4 people in their family. And so I want the students to understand that we just have ups and downs and things are different wherever we are. We can't assume everybody's the same. And then just with the spreadsheet, if you have the students do the spreadsheet and they have not used spreadsheets before, you might have to help them understand that a little bit more. So tips from Robin. Lisa had a great suggestion. I'm going to ask her to share with us about what she did after her class finished the simulation.
Thanks, Robin. Yes, whenever we did this in class as a way to celebrate, and I did do it, as Amy said, kind of like a capstone activity, but to celebrate them doing this and being engaged and doing so many things to pull together the idea of how to manage your money and make financial decisions as an adult and a household. So I just staged a block party, just like you would in your own neighborhood. And everybody brings in, a covered dish, or you, the instructor, could bring in, a bag of chips and maybe some Kool-Aid or something, and just have a celebration of their learning. So that was a great way to end it as well.
Love that. And as you use our simulation this year, share your suggestions with us. Share your ideas, the great things you've done. We'd love to see pictures as well so that we can share them with teachers across the country. So if you don't have a Take Charge Today account, we want you to get one so that you get access to the simulation and the materials and all of the other lessons that we have online for you. If you need a PD certificate for being at this webinar tonight, you can just email takechargetoday@arizona.edu. So take a picture of that screen if you need to do that. Tiffany will send those to you. Remember to follow us on social media. Lisa is so good about posting things and reminders and sharing things that we find that are wonderful. So follow us on Facebook, follow us on what used to be Twitter, so that you can get updates for other things that we are adding to our website curriculum, new activities that have been developed and shared. And then we want to thank the Freedom Center that out of the University of Arizona that helps us to be able to provide all these materials free for you, and Intuit for Education, which is also one of our supporters. I'm going to leave you right here with this slide for these upcoming webinars that we have. We hope that you will see us there, and hopefully you can share our materials with any friends or colleagues that you have. Go ahead and stick around if you have questions. We'll be here to help you if you want to set up an account and want some help with that. We'll be happy to help you right now or later on. But have a good night. Thanks for joining us.